All right, so we are going to get moving forward in the next section. So we are looking at talking about practice planning and game planning. Super excited to see Coach Joe Cercelli from Windsor. Joe is the current offensive coordinator of the Windsor Lancers. He also served as the defensive line coach and recruiting coordinator at Western University. Cercelli was drafted in the CFL by the Calgary Stampeders as an offensive lineman and played 2 seasons with the Argos. He completed his university football career. Sorry about that. He completed his university football career with the Western Mustangs, where he was a former OUA All-Star. And super excited. The Cercelli blood runs deep in London. And now it's all in Windsor, apparently. Just went down the 401 a little bit. But I appreciate, Joe, you taking the time to talk about practice planning.
Yeah, thank you, Aaron. I appreciate you giving me the opportunity. And thanks again to Coach Dennison. It was a great presentation. And just super excited to be here. So, Aaron, if you can allow me to share my screen, then we can get rocking and rolling.
Awesome. Should be good.
Okay. Awesome. So I am going to talk a little bit about offensive game and practice planning, and really kind of looking at a whole season approach, and really some of the things that you want to ask yourself as an offensive play caller and a coordinator, or if you're the head coach. So I'd like to get started. I know, Aaron, thank you for the great introduction, but I do want to point out a couple things. Number one, I had the opportunity to go to Western and play for a great coach in Greg Marshall, and I learned a lot there. But really, my football story began with my father, and I am so fortunate to have a great upbringing and be around the game. My father was a coach at high school level and was a position coach in university for over 30 years. So I grew up around the game, and it's where I fell in love with it. And, for me, looking back, and this is really what I wanted to do. And for me, I'm lucky enough to really be in a dream situation. So I was fortunate enough to be a draft pick and went to Calgary and learned under a great organization there with Coach Huffnagel and Coach Dickinson. And then I played 2 years with the Argos and got exposed to that system and Coach Milanovic, who ran Mark Trestman's offense, and really got exposed to a lot of things that I had never really thought of or seen that viewpoint. So it really opened my eyes to what was possible. And that was really at the beginning of kind of the spread college system entering its way into, more mainstream football and in university up here in Canada, and then ultimately in the pro game. Like Aaron said, I got an opportunity to coach at my alma mater. And the one thing I'll point out is I got an opportunity to work on the opposite side of the ball. And so I coached defense for 2 years, and it really gave me a unique perspective on what goes on in the other room, what defenses are thinking and how they're thinking, and at least what we did there with Coach Gleason. This was an awesome opportunity for me, but my love was always on offense. It's what I played. It's what I felt the most confident in. So when we got the opportunity to come down to Windsor and really embark on a journey to create a program and build something that shared the viewpoints and our beliefs, it was something that we couldn't pass up. There we go. So a little bit about, what I believe in our offense, just to give you a little bit of context. I truly believe you got to be an offense that can attack the whole field. All right. We pride ourselves on playing physical and relentless. We want to have a balanced attack so that we can play to our strengths, cater game plans to where we find we have the best matchup, whether it's on the ground, whether it's in the air. But ultimately, we're always trying to create those one-on-one situations where we can get a guy a ball in space, whether we have leverage on a guy or created opportunity for that one-on-one situation where our guy can make that guy miss. And ultimately we can scheme it up. And you know, Aaron, you talked about it when you were talking with Coach Dennison there. There's a million different ways to skin a cat, and a lot of football and offense and pass schemes are all, you know, pirated from one guy to another, and they change and morph a little bit. So this is what we do. This is my approach. By no means is it you know, revolutionary or anything like that. I've had an opportunity to learn from a lot of great coaches, and I've tried to take bits and pieces here and make it my own. So hopefully you guys get something out of it. Looking at offensive game planning, all right, and really breaking it down into a few steps that hopefully you can kind of look at yourself and look at your program and your team and implement them. And whether you're an offensive guy or even a defensive guy, I don't know how many are in here, but the same structure and the same thought process rings true. So the biggest thing is obviously looking within, right? You got to look in the mirror and figure out, who are you? What do you believe in? And what do you think gives you the best chance to win? And you got to have an identity. You know, for me, last season or 2019 was the first year I got a chance to coordinate at this level in the OUA. And looking back, there was a lot of stuff that I wish, you know, I did a little bit differently. So I'm super excited to get back to football this fall and get the opportunity to go out there and compete and coach our guys hard and give us the best chance to have success. We're going to look a little bit at offensive organization, you know, how to define what you do and looking at core schemes and keeping organized so that you can maximize your efficiency and your time during the season. Obviously looking at opponent film and reviewing the data and figuring out, you know, who the opponent is and what are they trying to do and where do you want to go beat them at. You know, we look about situational planning. So looking at down and distance, looking at field zones. And then a big thing is designing the call sheet, right? Understanding how you create that menu of what to choose and what situation and kind of how you need to marry that up to your prep week and to who you are philosophically in order to have the best level of execution. And then we want to look at install and team prep, kind of what we do. And I'll give you a look at some of the things that we do to communicate with our players and making sure that they're prepared. Talk about kind of a week at the OUA level or at the U Sports level and university football. Obviously, whether it's youth football, whether it's high school, it's going to be a little bit different. And then looking at a practice schedule. So how everything comes together. All right. And then I'll show you a couple examples on film of what we've done in the past and kind of what we're looking for. So hopefully if you guys have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat or share them with Aaron and I'll try and address them all at the end. Okay. So self-scout. You know, this is really questions that you want to ask yourself every year, every week, and really whenever you make a decision or planning, there are always things that you want to keep in the forefront of your mind. So who are we as a football team philosophically, right? What do we want to do? What is the head coach's vision? What's your vision? And really they can be one thing, but it really can't become complete until you look at the other side of the equation is who do you have, right? Who's your personnel? And I think the big thing as coaches, not only are we trying to maximize each individual in order to make them the best that they can be, but we have to do that with the unit as well. So we have to understand that, hey, we've got to get all 12 guys and put the best 12 guys out there. So if we're a team that wants to spread the ball out and throw it all over the field, but we got 6 really good offensive linemen or we've got 3 really good running backs, well, how much sense does that make? So I think you really have to be flexible. Obviously, the core fundamentals don't change. It's blocking, it's tackling, it's protecting the football, it's change of direction. All those things are going to lead you to have success. But you really have to make sure that you give yourself the best chance and everyone around your organization by making sure you're putting out the 12 guys that you trust the most that are going to give you that best chance to have success. So what are your strengths and weaknesses, like we just touched on, right? Weakness could be something where it's a bit of a depth issue. So maybe we want to make sure that we are bringing a guy along or not putting him in certain situations, right? Strengths might be the multiplicity we can get and the multi-talented player that we have that is just as good as a receiver as he is a running back, someone that we can move around. Or maybe we have a team that's a little bit limited. They haven't had a ton of experience. They don't have the knowledge that we expect, or they're not there yet. And I know that's a lot of guys, whether you look at youth football and really delving into the fundamentals and building that aspect up. When you look to high school, and sometimes if you got some really good players, you can start getting a little bit advanced, but those guys are far and few between. So we're lucky at our level and university get to, put our hands on the guys year round. And right now with COVID and going through all those things, it has definitely been a virtual world. But we're excited because we get to really teach them the game, and we have had the most amount of time to do it. So you got to always ask yourself, who are your go-to guys? Who are your playmakers? You don't want to look at the box score and be disappointed that, your top guy only carried the ball 8 or 9 times and maybe he caught 2 passes, and that wasn't the plan. So developing a plan and follow through and executing it is critical. And then whether it's what do we need to improve upon from the year previous, from the week previous, right? Is there a certain aspect of our game that was lacking, right? And did we give up a ton of pressures because, we didn't understand our protection schemes? Was it something where our quarterback was unsure of what his reads were, so we held on to the ball and he got hit, right? So we need to constantly be looking at what we're doing and figuring out a plan of attack to address those issues. And keep taking steps each week. So offensive organization, once you answer the questions, right, you can create your vision. You can start to build and organize your offense. And I think the next step is really identifying what are your core principles? What are your core schemes that you believe in, that no matter what the opponent is going to do, what challenges they present, you're going to run them. And you're going to run them multiple times. They might look different. They might be from a different formation, but you're an inside zone team. You're going to run it 10 times. You know that you're a gap scheme. You're going to run power 6 or 7 times a game, right? And you start to build an identity, right? And your players get confident, and you build consistency in your execution. So it really doesn't matter what the problem is presented to you. You have built the belief, and you've built the experience of practicing those schemes and developing them so that your players, no matter what the situation, are going to find ways to execute. So you look at, how does a complementary play work? Well, it's plays off those, right? Whether it's nakeds, bootlegs, whether it's play action, whether it's a scheme that, is counterintuitive or presents one challenge and ends up hitting in the opposite direction. So we like to break it down between families, obviously run game and pass game families. So whether you're a zone team, a gap team, whether you're an inside zone team, you want to run split zone, you're going to be, heavy with pulling and trapping and tossing the ball out to the perimeter, or you going to be an outside zone team, right? Starting to build in and pick those 2 or 3 core schemes that are going to identify who you are offensively when it comes to running the football. Because I think that, and this was, an issue that we ran into, is try to be a jack of all trades, you're a master of none. And so, whether it was, being a little bit paranoid, I think at times in 19, we tried to do way too much. And looking back, I get excited because despite that, we still had a lot of success. So I'm excited for the future and the chance to get back out and always looking to grow as a coach. And obviously you expect your student athletes to do the same. From a pass game family, you're looking at the different varieties that you have, and everyone runs the similar schemes, but understanding where's your bread and butter. Right? If you have a great athlete at quarterback who maybe doesn't have a great arm, right, you're going to be limited in what you can do down the field, right? Just on the opposite end, if you have a guy that is a true distributor, someone who is, got a talented arm, understands, can see depth and has the perception of what they're looking at and how to read defenses and distribute the football, then you're going to want to put a little bit more on his plate. So again, it's always coming back to, how can you maximize who you have? So when we look at these families, all right, this is an example of a pass game kind of structure and what we do. I got a lot of this from Coach Day over there at Ohio State. I thought it was great in terms of organization, especially out of season. But you really want to break down what you do and where it comes into play. And these are some just generic things that I threw up here to give you guys an idea. But when you start to look at, hey, this is all that we have in our book, this is what we're going to coach up, or this is our plan. We're not going to go into every game with all these plays, right? It's impossible. But we start looking at, hey, this is the menu we have to choose off of. And now we know that, hey, we're going to run quick outs. That's going to be a core fundamental pass concept that we go into each week. We're going to run bubble screens with an RPO. We're going to run double slant. And so you start to highlight, all right, these are our core fundamentals. And you can now start to work those into your drill work, into your practice plan, where you're geared toward getting really good at those things because you know they're going to be consistent week to week in what your plan of attack is. Maybe you're a big team that throws smash, or you want to throw 4 verts, right? You're going to run a lot of flood concepts, off play action, whatever it may be. All right. You start to identify, hey, these are our core fundamentals. All right. These are not fundamentals. These are our core schemes. Okay. And you can look at, hey, this is what we want to do when we get to the red zone. So we want to take shots when we get to the high red zone, or we're going to, isolate linebackers and try and play a matchup game down low. So all those different things go into it. What kind of double moves do we want to carry? Are we going to run a slant and go because we've matched it up where the defense is going to see a ton of slants each week? So we got to have that variation, and we want to have that connection between our schemes. Okay. So once you figure out who you are, once you figure out what you're going to do, you obviously got to look at the opponent, right? And at the university level, we film share every week by rule. We got a lot of data. We got a lot of data previous years, all those things. So, if you've been in the league for a few years, your resume's out there, right? Guys know what you do and what you like to do, and you're going to change, slightly here and there, but at your core, you have your ideals and your beliefs. So we want to look at each week and putting data on about 3 game tapes or the opponents' 3 previous games. If there's a team that plays with a similar style than us, that'll obviously take some precedence. And if it's a team that has a coordinator that plays a specific style of offense or defense, obviously a matchup from year previous is something that you might be able to get some good data from. So the emphasis is definitely on most recent, but you also want to make sure that you're not missing out on something that could help you formulate a great plan. So you got to ask yourself, what's that team's philosophy? Are they a pressure team? Do they want to play a lot of man coverage behind it? Are they going to run a lot of fire zones and play zone behind it? Do they play an odd front? Do they play an even front? Are they big? We start to look at what kind of a play caller are they, right? And you start to get the data from each situation, and we'll go through it in a second here. And you can really build a book on what you're about to see that coming week. What do they give up? Defenses are always going to have one kind of soft area. And usually, the guys on the other side are trying to figure out, hey, where do we want to give it up? Right? What doesn't this team really do? And so that's the beauty of the chess match. So we look at strengths and weaknesses of the opponent. You're looking at personnel. Who are we attacking? Right? Who do we want to go after? Who, do we feel like they have a better matchup of? Who do we want to avoid? If we're playing a team that has a great defensive front, right, we're going to try and get the ball out to the edges, or vice versa. If we feel like we can really match up well inside, we want to pound the ball. So understanding, that opponent is so huge. And then scheme, where and how do we want to attack them, right? What gives them trouble? What have we seen on film? Who's the guy that's consistently, missing tackles or getting beat deep or biting on double moves? All things that we need to take into account. Okay. Now looking at things from a little bit more schematically, how do they formation adjust? Do they rotate their secondary? Do they run with motion? Are they going to bump the box? Are they going to track the Sam? meaning if we have a 32 look, all right, and is there Sam going to play over the H receiver? And if the H motions across, is Sam going to run with him? All right, are they going to spin? Are they going to bump the box where now the Sam takes the Mike's responsibility? All right, and the Mike takes the Will's responsibility, and now the Will's out. So all those questions need to be answered, and there's pros and cons to every defense, right? And there's things that you can take advantage of to create leverage, create space, and give yourself the best chance to have success. The next thing is, where do they like to pressure? When? How? What's their favorite blitz? Are they a big overload team where they're going to bring 4 strong, 4 weak, try and overload protections or 6-man pros? Are they a team that, they give up a first down and now they're playing like their back's against the wall? Are they a team that's very passive? They want to keep things in front of you. And then all of a sudden you get to a situation like 2nd and long or 2nd and mid, and you can just, they're going to tee off and bring the heat. So all those things are very important, and you got to make sure, especially with pressure, how can you protect your quarterback? Most guys aren't fortunate to have, more than one guy that they really feel great about. If you have 2, man, that's a bonus. For us, we got a really great veteran quarterback, and the guys behind him are young, and they don't have that same experience. So for us, everything's about protecting the quarterback. When your head coach is an O lineman or an ex-O lineman, it starts up front, and that's obviously what I had a chance to play. So it's no different. You got to protect your quarterback, whether it's through the concept you're asking him to throw and matching up the number of protectors you have. You don't want to throw something down the field in a situation where you're expecting pressure, and all of a sudden that quarterback's holding on, waiting for that route to develop, and now he's getting a helmet in the back. That doesn't help. All right. So the other questions you got to look in the back end, right? What are their coverage tendencies? How do they adjust to overload formation? So if you're in 41, are they going to play, 1 or 2 formation checks that they're going to get to where they're going to roll to some type of, lock on the backside and play some type of cover 4 or cover 3 zone over there? What are they going to do? A lot of teams are very consistent. They might have 2 or 3 options, right? Teams at the heart of them, or coaches at the heart of them, know what they want to do, and they do it again and again. So no one's going to reinvent themselves week in and week out. And if you do, your players' heads are going to be spinning and they're going to be busting anyway. So the guys, what you put on film is who you are. Okay. So how do they play situationally? How does the defensive coordinator play call versus down and distance? We played a team last year that loved to be in sub personnel and 2nd and medium. But once it got 2nd and long, so 7 to 11, they were very passive. But if it was 2nd and 4 to 6, man, they were bringing the heat. So you got to understand where you are. And obviously for us at the university level, and if you're at the pro level, you got the advantage of spotters and guys that can make sure you understand where you are on the field so that your play call reflects that accordingly. But some guys are more concentrated on field zone. So when you're backed up and you're in the shadow of your own goal posts, our team's going to be aggressive. Are they going to try and make that splash play and try and get 2 points? Or are they going to be passive and not want to give up the big play and keep you pinned in there? What about after you get a first down? Our team's going to be more aggressive. It's just naturally that defensive coordinators, the longer that defense is on the field, the more they're going to get blitz happy, the more they're going to want to take chances because they got to do something to get that ball back and force you to punt. Another big area that you got to look into is the red zone. And that was an area that we fell short in 19, and it was a huge spot that we need to improve. And we felt like we've addressed. What does a defense do after a big play? How do they handle no huddle if you're changing tempos, right? There's probably about 5 or 6 teams that are completely no huddle in our league. We're a team that huddles. We do have a no huddle package, but it's something that we feel like gives us the versatility and is where we're at now. If you have a great defense and you have confidence, then that's great. But if you're playing no huddle and, you're 2 and out, 3 drives in a row, those guys could be on the field for a long time. All right. So looking at planning by situation. So creating the call sheet. So right now you've gone back to that menu. You've locked in, what are your core beliefs? Now, each week, can you create a little bit of illusion of complexity, and can you disguise what you're trying to do? Because those guys are smart on the defensive side. All right. They might not look it. They might not, show it from time to time. They'll figure it out. So you want to make sure you're matching up your pass game and run game formations and motions to create complements, right? You want to show the same look, but have that ability to do different things and attack different parts of the field in those same looks. Did you see something that you can build off of what we do? So maybe it's a slight change in how we, run a dagger concept, or how we run smash, or a motion that disguises, our favorite formation for smash, or personnel manipulations, right? Or did we see something on film that gives them trouble? Maybe the last week, teams were running outside zone and gashing them, and they hit them for, they ran it 10 times and averaged, 8 yards a crack. Well, that's something that we want to look at. Does that fit with what we do? If it does, man, we want to load it up. Okay. Understand with who and where you want to attack. So moving guys around, right? Defenses are pretty smart. If you move your great X receiver to the field side, they're saying, all right, that guy's moving for a reason. So they want to have some type of check or some type of counter. So you got to make sure that if you're moving guys around in the pass game, that you're also moving them around in the run game. And again, not really just waving the flag of saying, hey, I'm putting my stud over here and I'm going to feed him the ball, right? You got to make sure that you're playing complementary football and you're not necessarily just showing your card. And then the last one we talked about is, do we need to make adjustments to their protection or to their blitzes? Can we protect, right? And we got a great picture of Andy Reid, probably one of the best play callers. And you see the big sheets, right? You definitely don't want to be overwhelmed. So how much is too much? Right? How much do I need? How many second and long calls do I need? Right? And I wish I did this earlier in my coaching career. And I know I haven't been doing it a ton, but I'm thankful of kind of figuring this out and stumbling upon it. But you've got to do the homework, right? You've got to find out the data. So in 2019, we looked back and said, okay, this is how many times we're in this situation per game. Okay. And we could have done it for the league. We did it for ourselves. But you also need to know the high end and the low end on that, right? So you can go into one game and in 19, we averaged 33 first and 10s per game. Of that 33, 14 were P and 10. So possession and 10, meaning you start with the football. And again, usually defensive coordinators play that down a little bit different than the second first down. So you start to understand, all right, what are our bread and butter? What are going to get us off to a hot start? Or maybe we're getting aggressive and we want to run something that, man, if they don't pressure us here or they play a little bit more of a vanilla look, we're going to be licking our chops. So, that deep play action, that screen pass on P and 10 where your defensive ends are they're foaming at the mouth. They've just been on the sideline. They got the water and they want to get after the passer. Now you can hit them with the screen, right? So those aggressive play calls on first down, where do you feel like you really can have a ton of success? What are those easy completions for your quarterback? Things that get your drive going, build confidence. All right. And then you look into second down. So how many times are you going to be in second and short? So 1 to 3. Well, 6 per game. So how many are you going to carry on your call sheet? It doesn't make sense to have 10, right? And so I think the big thing is you want to start on what are your core plays and where do they fit in on first and 10? And then of these plays, you want to start doubling them up. And you're not going to have 33 plays for first and 10 because you're going to run some plays 4 or 5 times, right? You might plan on running a couple plays once or twice, see where you're at, but you've got to have confidence in them that you can double call them, triple call them, so that you're practicing them through the week. So you might have a play call that you really like on first and 10 that you're going to like in second and 1 to 3. That's your bread and butter. You're going to run it again if you're in that situation of third and 1 to 3, or you're going to run it if you're in the low red zone. All right. So you start to understand that, hey, I've got to make sure I'm stacking these plays and they're showing up multiple times in my game plan so that I'm not practicing them twice all week, and then I'm going to pull it out of my hat on, the third drive of the third quarter, right? You want to make sure that if we're going to run a play in the game, one, we've repped it against different looks. The number ones have got it. The number twos have got it. If you're subbing receivers, everyone's got to make sure that they've had a chance to rep it out. Otherwise, you really have a poor chance of executing at a high rate. So looking at these and making sure you build a plan, right? There's going to be plays on second and long. You look at 11 per game. So how many are you going to carry? Maybe 6, maybe 7, right? Second and long plays, maybe 4 or 5 pass concepts, maybe a draw, maybe a couple screens, and you're good to go. And you want to have confidence in those calls that you can run them on 1st and 10. They can double back, all right? And you get comfortable looking at the field zones and incorporating those calls within there. But this is the big thing, guys, is understanding how much is too much, right? If you look at second and extra long, you're going to have 2 plays a game, right? That might be the same play that doubles in second and 7 to 11, right? Maybe you're throwing a big dig and you're going to complete it at 15 yards anyway. So it doubles down, right? How many plays are you going to spend in the red zone, low red zone? You get an average of 4 per game. Now, each team's going to be, somewhat different, but it's going to be fairly consistent for your program and your style and your team as you go through the season. So it comes back to this, and you have the chart. So you've already highlighted 4 or 5 core plays in your shorts, your second and medium plays that you like, vertical shots and aggressive plays that you like. And now you start plugging them into all those situations. So you're doubling down on them. And you might be running them in different formations. You might be running them with different motions. But to the quarterback, it's the same decision-making process. It's the same reads, right? To your receivers, it's the same core route principles, right? You're not changing. You're not reinventing the wheel week to week. Okay, so here's an example. All right, this is just a simple 2-man stick that we run to the field. Here is the 23 formation that is simple playbook 101, day 1. All right, now here are all the varieties that we can run. So here's the illusion of complexity. We can run it out of 23. We can motion to it. We can scramble motion to it. We can run it with a tight end. We can run it out of a bunch. Well, the quarterback's decision is the exact same. The receivers know that all they're doing is starting from a different spot, but getting to the same finishing location. So now your coaching is the same. To the defense, if they're thinking, all right, these guys run this out of 23, well, all of a sudden we don't get to 23 until, the snap of the football. Or maybe we're in a different formation. Or rather than being, a receiver or a slot, it's an H-back who's in a wing or a tight end. Or it's a back out of the backfield. So all those things give you the illusion of complexity, but really keep it simple for your offense and keep it simple for you as a play caller to understand, all right, this is how I want to attack the team. But I know that when I get into this formation, I'm going to get the Mike linebacker on my running back rather than, a defensive back on my slot. Well, I like that matchup a heck of a lot better. So this is a typical week for us guys in the college, in the OUA, and this is what we do. Some teams definitely do it different, but Sunday in the morning we'll wrap up and finish the previous week, and then we'll finish the inputting data and building the tendency reports of the next week's opponent. So we want to get kind of all our grunt work done on Sunday. Sometimes it bleeds into Monday, depending on how much you were able to get done the previous week. On Monday, we try and create scouting reports and really a game plan skeleton with coaches. So we'll meet with the coaches. I'll meet with quarterbacks, just start to introduce the defensive schemes, what kind of coverage. But the players, especially the ones that love it and your leaders and your veterans and the guys that are in big roles, man, as soon as they get out of that meeting on Sunday, they're watching film, right? They're getting after it. They want to see, how they're going to match up against Laurie, or how they're going to match up against Waterloo or whoever the opponent is. So we'll meet just with the quarterbacks. The players are off. They'll get a lift in, and we'll meet with the coaches and really hammer out the plan. Tuesday, we have a first down focus. So if you're a high school or youth coach, I think it's important to really have a theme to your day or to your practice where you're really focusing on one scenario or one outcome so that your play calling and your focus and your drill work can all be geared toward that day. The same with the players. They understand where you are on the field. So we're going to walk through the fronts, the covers, the stunts. We're going to install some of the tweaks here and there. We're going to install and introduce the defense. Wednesday is our second down day, so we're going to look at second and long. We got to pick up the blitz. Thursday, we look at red zone and short yardage. Friday, we walk through, and Saturday is the game. So it is quick. It comes at them. We try and, again, get their minds in that space of here we are on the field. You guys know what the game plan is. You know, the 3 or 4 plays that you're going to get on, first and goal. All right, or second and long. You're going to expect that. And when the guys expect and understand what's coming, man, they can execute it at a much better rate. So here's kind of a look at some of the stuff that we'll communicate to our guys. What's an overview? What kind of defense do these guys play? What's their base front? What do they like to play on first down? How does the Sam play the third receiver, the H-back, or the tight end, or the R, depending on how you call it? What's their base coverage? How do they align? How do they adjust if we're in overload formations? How are they going to play pulling guards? How are they going to play motion? So we want to illustrate, and communicate what we want them to know, but they need to know certain things, right? So we don't want to give them every single piece of data and overwhelm them. Some guys want it, all right? Other guys, it's in one ear and out the other, and they can't compute the whole thing. So you got to make sure that you break it down, you give them the Coles notes, and you make sure that whatever's the most important thing, they understand how it fits into that opponent and what your plan to win is. So when you're talking about practice scheme and now you've made the game plan, you've strategized and you know how you want to attack teams in those situations, how are you going to practice it so it's ready for execution on Saturday or on game day, right? How many reps will you practice of that player scheme? And again, if it's a different formation, if it's a different motion, maybe that needs an individual look, right? Or is your quarterback someone who can really work through those same things where, hey, this is the same as that. It's just dressed up a little differently, right? Some guys are a little bit better at it than others, right? Depends where that guy is, who that player is. So who's getting the reps? Is it the 1? Is it the 2? If you're rotating receivers in practice, is the guy that you want to run that play or that specific scheme in there so that when it happens in real life on game day, he's the guy that's done it all week in practice, has seen it against the different looks that the defense can present. So for us, we're going to get it in a walkthrough. We're going to get it on air where we're going kind of full speed and really just running through and working timing and location. We're going to break it down into Cercelli and inside run where we're looking at situational matchups. So for myself, I'm scripting the defensive coverages that match up with the data that we got from the film, right? If we know on second and long, they're going to run a lot of 2-man. Well, that's what you got to practice against that week, right? And what's more difficult, right? I'm not going to call a play that I would on second and mid on second and long when I know a team's going to play a lot of 2-man. And if I do, it better match up where it's something that has a good chance of beating that 2-man concept. You're not always going to understand completely what the defense is doing, but you've got to be consistent and master those schemes so that no matter what they do, all right, you got a chance to execute it and go make a first down. So blitz pickup, putting the strain on the quarterback, right? He's got guys coming at him. He's in a pressure situation, putting pressure on the offensive line, the running backs. Our offense and defense, we're going to compete against each other every day, whether it's in no huddle, situational, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And then we're going to have O-Scout. So we're going to script to match up. This is exactly what the opponent's going to do. This is how they play it. And we get our younger guys and the guys that aren't necessarily up that week to give us a look and help us rehearse against that team. So big thing is you've got the plays. Now, this is the question, and this is the thought process of every play. Every player on every play. Where do I start? Where am I going? And how do I succeed? Or what the heck am I doing when I get there? And that's what the mastery of the scheme through the drill work really ensures, right? Drill work, it makes the scheme work, all right? If you don't drill it, you can't expect it to be done, right? And you got to get super specific. Gone are the days where you can just run on air 1,000 times and expect it to happen. You got to work how the offensive line is going to fit the double team, right? How do I want to break against this coverage? If my half is low, if he's pedaling out and he's playing in a high zone, all those things that require specific teaching. So that's what you're working on day to day in practice, and you're gearing toward what that theme of the day is. On first and 10 day, on day one, right? These are our core fundamentals that we're drilling home so that they are good to go on game day. Same thing with second and pass, right? We got to make sure that those drills match up what we're doing. And we want to work against specific looks, especially the ones that are most challenging or the ones that maybe we aren't as familiar with. You know, there's a couple teams that run a lot of +1 pressures, and not every team does. So when you're playing those teams that week, you better be prepared for it. Otherwise, it's going to burn you and it's going to hurt. And if it doesn't show up in the game plan or if it doesn't show up on the film, then scrap the drill, right? We don't have time during the week, all right, to work on things that need to be addressed in the off season. So that's a little bit different. When you get to the younger level of football, youth, high school, you got to have that long-term approach. In university, it is we got to be ready to go on Saturday. Competition is fierce. Every program is very disciplined and very systematic in their approach. So you got to make sure that you are good to go. So film, I'll show you a couple clips because I know I'm tight on time here, but how can we package things to look the same? How can we manipulate our base concepts, right? What gives them the most problems? How do we create space for the matchups we want? And then how can we give our quarterback multiple options? So those are the questions that you should be answering as you watch your opponent and as you create those plays and tinker with your schemes week to week so that you can take advantage of the weaknesses or the things that the defense are a little bit more vulnerable to. So I'll give you a couple looks here. So here we were playing Western back in 2019, and the previous week they played University of Guelph. And Guelph ran this formation or a slight variation on it where they took their inside receiver, put him on the ball probably about 10 or 12 times. And every single time that half came down and pressed the point. So here's a base play for us, guys. It's pretty simple. You guys are running it in your playbooks right now. It's 4 verticals, all right? We're really just dividing the field. So we've locked 2 outs here, but we wanted to make sure that that player was low, all right? And we wanted to try and get them into a single high structure and something that we could run divide against, all right? So this helps us accomplish that. If it doesn't happen, it's not the end of the world, but here's game planning. Here's a little manipulation that hopefully gives us an advantage. So we keep that half low, and now we have a chance where we're not worrying about a boundary safety and we have to push past our first read. All right. So now we have the 2-on-1 that we want. You know, we make it a little bit more difficult on ourselves, but we end up getting the job done. Okay. So there's an opportunity of looking to see what previous teams have done and where they fit in and how you can accomplish them. What's going on here? Sorry, fellas. A couple of jokesters. All right, here's against Mac again. So on this play, guys, we want to have answers, right? So we get into a 4-by-1 with a tight end weak formation. We know that Mac is a bump team, so they're not going to move their Sam. They're going to try and keep some type of 2-high structure. And if we have a numbers advantage or we have even numbers here, 4/4, we want to throw this ball. So here we go. Sam's playing halfway. Don't really count the free safety. We'll let him run unblocked on a really quick screen outside. All right. And now we really just have another run play, right? Where we're running a bubble screen and we're living on the edges. We felt like this is a better matchup for us personnel wise, where we can at least put the ball in space and force them to make a tackle in space. Okay. So if they didn't show up like this, all right, we got a run play on. So our quarterback can make the decision and put the ball in play in a spot that we have an advantage to. I'll show you one more, guys. Okay, so here we are against Queens. And again, we're running a concept that we run from day one. We've got a vertical, we've got a big dig, all right, and then usually we got a flat. Okay, so people call this gin, go with an in. You could, maybe you've heard of it as dagger. All right, so here we are running the same concept. We're just going to manipulate it. So we're going to motion this slot across. We're now going to run the vertical from the tight end. All right, and we're going to run the flat route from the opposite side, flying across the field. Okay, so with this motion, we knew that Queens was going to rotate and top. All right, so here comes their field half now playing the free safety. We kind of create a middle of the field open look here. All right, and we can sneak now the tight end up the middle, and we can get a nice little hole shot up the seam. So quarterback's reading it the same way. It's the same routes. All right, it's going to develop slightly differently, but at the end of the day, his decision making is the same, and that's really the straw that stirs the drink. So if you can create the illusion of multiplicity and of being complex, but still keep it simple for your guys, that's when you're going to have the most success, I believe, and when you're going to present the most challenges for defenses. All right. But just because we're tight on time, guys, thank you, guys. Thank you, Aaron, for the opportunity. If you guys have any questions, I'll do my best to try and answer them now. I left my email there, guys. If you want to talk football or want to go through anything about the presentation, please feel free to reach out. I'd love to talk. I'd love to talk to you about what we're doing here at the University of Windsor. And would love to talk football with anyone that
Fuck
wants
me,
to
daddy.
learn
Fuck
and
me, daddy.
talk about.
Oh, yeah. Oh.
Okay.
Okay. So Joe, thank you so much.
No problem.
A couple of quick questions for you. So I know one of the big things is diving into data and like really analyzing and understanding not only your tendencies, but the tendencies of, your opponent. So I guess the big question is how important is technology in the, with video and the data analytics and everything that is, built into that? How important is technology in really understanding what you're doing for tendency wise and what the opponent is doing?
Yeah, I think it's critical. I think, like I said, it starts with you first. All right. And that's where you got to focus a large part of your energy on. You want to make sure that your guys are confident at mastering, what you do. So no matter what you see across from you, you can have success. But at the same time, using the data to be able to predict or to figure out what teams like to do and in those situations, what you're going to see, it makes preparing the players a heck of a lot easier. It makes preparing yourself as a coach and a play caller a heck of a lot easier. So it's important you understand and you can build a picture of, hey, this is what this defensive coach wants to do, right? And you can start to see, especially with the OUA, there's so many coaches that have worked together in the past or come from, different coaching trees. I know Coach Marshall's on next here. But you're going to see the influences throughout the league. So you've got a great opportunity in the OUA to see a lot of different football, but I think you see a lot of kind of the core or the skeleton of the system somewhat similar. But data is huge. I mean, it really gives you, sometimes the answers before the test.
The other thing,
Yeah, me too, bro.
So we heard a lot about, simplicity and reducing complexity, in basically every presentation that we had. And I know, as a young coach myself, I try to not get in front of myself of like, this is a great concept. This is great. Like, how hard was it for you to really tailor yourself down and just do kind of what, you think you are the best at doing rather than all the great things you could be doing?
Yeah. That's a great question. And Aaron, that was the biggest thing that I struggled with in my first year. and really, you're trying to get hung up on the X's and O's and trying to figure out something that can't be stopped. But there's so many different ways everything and anything can get stopped. So you've really got to have the discipline to make things very similar to the players and just dress them up a different way. And I think at the end of the day, you look at the teams that have had the most success in this league, it's teams that are consistent executing because they have a consistent identity and they do what they do, and it's definitely a good kind of way to think about it, and a warning, I guess, of sorts to young coaches is to make sure that you master your core first before you start working out and getting, too fired up of whatever the last clinic is you saw.
I think that's a really good point. Especially coming back after the, this big pause of us not being, one of the things I want to get your feedback on is, and we talked about this a little bit, and I think Coach Adam talked about a lot of it on the strength and conditioning side, but, we're going to have guys coming into potentially youth sports that haven't played a game since their grade 10 or 11 year. And how do you as a coach, when building a practice plan and a yearly plan and an offensive system, deal with that aspect going into 2021 or 2021?
Yeah, that's the $1 million question. And the only saving grace is that all the other coaches got to figure out the same thing. So we're not the only ones in that issue or dealing with that issue. But you're right. I look at what we've been able to do from a football perspective. I can't even tell you the last time I think we had live tackling was, March 13th of 2020. So it's been a while, and we've been able to run some Cercelli here and there, depending on, what situation we were in or wherever guys were in the province and dealing with their health regions. But you're right. It is going to be difficult, and I think it's imperative that the league understands that, hey, we need some time to get these guys right and make sure that we get a chance to get them out on the field and coaching them up and getting those football movements back, and the ones that you can't do by yourself, fitting up on a block, taking on a block, beating a block, tackling, all those things that were virtually impossible the last 18 months.
So last question I have for you, Coach, is in terms of building the plan for game day, and like I know you had mentioned, based on what you're going to do every week, based on the opponent that you have, how do you tailor the percentage of time you spend in practice to the things that you're going to do exactly for that week in gameplay versus the things that your core, okay, these are things we always do really well, but maybe this week we have to shift a little bit. How do you manage the practice reps that you do in a week versus game plan versus what you're just trying to always be good at?
Yeah. No, that again is a great question. It's something that you've got to ask yourself: is putting something new in worth it, or do you have something that gets something along the similar lines already in that you've already been doing? And just because maybe a team did it a little bit different, or you've seen it done a different way, is it worth the time and that it's going to take to rep it? We had plays, Aaron, in 19 that we were really good and we executed well in the first, 2 or 3 games of the season that, to be honest, we didn't practice or spend enough time practicing them as we, grew older into the season, and those plays became less efficient. So I think you have to have a good balance. And I think at your core, you really have to make sure you are repping through your identity until it doesn't matter, what you see out there. You're going to be able to execute it. So I think you've got to have a good mix. For us, when we talk about those theme days, we might get 10 plays of a walkthrough. We might get a 10-minute offense on air period. We might get 10 plays of Cercelli, 10 plays of team, and then a 2-minute drill. So you might see the same scheme or the same play 5 or 6 different times, and that's on Tuesday. And you might see that play now 2 or 3 times on on Wednesday because it doubles down as a second down call for us. And then, okay, what about in the red zone or situationally? And that's why I think it's so important to make sure you're stacking your concepts, or you're stacking your core plays in what situation you like to run them, so that you can practice them, 7, 8, 10 times a week, because, half of those times are you getting pressure. Half those times are you getting, blitz and or cover 3 versus cover 4 versus all those things. Who's rotated in? Is your 6th offensive lineman in, or your 7th, or your number 2 running back? All those things are so important. So yeah, you've got to do a great job of kind of keeping note of what you've run and what you've practiced, and make sure that, hey, I can love a play as much as I like, and it can work in theory, but if my guys aren't loving it, or we're not doing it right, then no matter what, at the end of the day, we're standing on the sidelines. So if my quarterback doesn't like a play, even though, I feel really confident it's going to work and it's great against the team and what they do stylistically, then I got to shelve it, because I can see things some way and he sees things a different way. And at the end of the day, we just got to make sure that it's all about kind of giving ourselves the best chance and making sure that we can get all those guys on board.
It's a great way to put it, right? Like, a lot of times us as coaches, we want to see this great play drawn up that we've got work. And sometimes the players just tell us what works and what doesn't. And, especially breaking down for practice and figuring out how many plays you're going to rep. I know OCs, we'd love to run 800 plays a practice, right? But that's just not the reality. So, Joe, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us today. The time and effort that it takes to actually build practice planning and all of the game planning stuff, and to you to be able to explain it to us today in that fashion is fantastic. And I really appreciate it.
Well, honestly, it was my pleasure. Excited to continue to watch some of these speakers and talk football, man. It's awesome.
Great. That's awesome. So we're going to